What is up, Sopranos fans? This is Pure Kino, and this is another Sopranos vlog. I'm not sure if vlog is the right word for what this is, but I'm just going to keep using it for now. We're going to be reviewing another episode today, this time Season 1, Episode 2, 46 long. Like I mentioned in my last review, this episode was filmed almost a full year after the pilot was shot. In between that time, they had worked on developing the story, and they had more of an idea of what the show was going to be about. They introduced some things here that would get established throughout the rest of the series and weren't present in the pilot. This is the first time we're introduced to Jackie Aprile as the acting boss of the family. I think they realized it would be a good idea for Tony to not immediately be the boss, but that's something he would be working towards throughout this season, and that gives a lot of great conflict between him and Junior. This is the first time we're introduced to Brendan Falone, Christopher's drug-addicted and reckless friend. He gets into a little bit of trouble in this episode. We're also introduced to Georgie for the first time, the barman at the Bada Bing, who's not that bright and kind of gets on Tony's nerves. Tony would abuse Georgie throughout the series, so it's really funny to see him, struggling in this episode with the phones, and then Tony gets pissed at him and starts the trend of beating him. And lastly, we're introduced to Mikey Palmise, Junior's right-hand man in the first season. He and Tony just really do not like each other, but they have to act nice, at least on the surface level, because they're supposed to be at peace between each other. But we obviously know that that's not going to last forever because these two despise each other. 46 long. There's basically two plots going on in this episode. The first plot is with Christopher and Brendan. They've robbed a truck that belongs to Junior. Tony has to basically have a sit down with Jackie and Junior to kind of work out a deal. Christopher and Brendan are basically forced to pay restitution, which they are not happy about. They're tired of getting treated badly, not respected. So they decide, they're not going to listen to the rules. They're going to rob another truck that belongs to Junior. Eventually, Christopher realizes that this is not a smart move. He needs to kind of be loyal to Tony and do what he says. So he backs out. Brendan does the job anyway, and something goes wrong, and the driver of the truck ends up being killed. Tony eventually, mediates it. They have to return the truck and the things they stole, and Tony and his crew get a little taste of it too. That's a trend that would be established in a lot of episodes. Even when they do something wrong, there's always a little bit of skimming off the top for themselves, even when they have to pay restitution, which is pretty funny. The main plot of this episode, though, revolves around Livia. She's living by herself. Tony's worried about her. He wants to put her in a retirement community, not a retirement home, as he continues to emphasize. But Livia doesn't want to. She is a hassle. She's very negative and is just making his life very hard. Eventually, she almost burns her house down. Tony brings in a maid to kind of help out around the house, but Livia drives the maid away with her probably racism. That's probably what it was, but basically just by being a horrible person. And eventually she runs over a friend of hers while driving because she's getting too old to drive now. And finally Tony, pulls the plug and is like, okay, we're putting you in a retirement community. And she's pissed about this. And Tony has a lot of negative feelings because of his mother, but he's not able to really express it. He has this idea that he needs to be a good son and treat his mother well, even though she's a horrible person. And that disconnect there, not being able to realize that he kind of hates his mom, forces him to displace his anger on other people. And at the end of the episode, he beats up Georgie because Georgie's messing up with the phone. It reminds him of his mother. And that is a classic Tony Soprano move. Something pisses him off. He's not able to express it properly, and he takes it out on someone else. Kicks the dog, metaphorically. That is the plot of this episode. Really good introduction to Tony's character and his psychological problems. This was also the first episode it's the first and only episode to ever open with a cold open. So before the title sequence, there's a scene where they're counting money and they see this new show where they're interviewing a mobster who's turned, author turned witness. And they're talking about the downfall of the mafia and why things are going down. It's kind of ironic because they're counting money as they do this, so we can see that the mob is still operating, they're still making money, but things definitely are trending downhill. That's a theme throughout The Sopranos. Tony says it in the first episode that he came in at the end. The best times are already past. And yeah, this is a great kind of introduction to that. It's the only time they've ever done a cold open, which is pretty interesting. Every other time, it's always the title sequence is the very first thing, and then they jump into the episode. So I do think that theme of things on a decline is very important to the show. And the last thing I just noticed here was that Tony is a lot nicer to Carmela in this episode than throughout the rest of the series. There's a scene when Olivia starts the fire. He calls Carmela to go over there and check on his mom, and he apologizes because he knows that she's busy, and he asked her to go over there anyway. That line stood out to me a lot. Tony in later seasons would never, be considerate of someone else's time, would never apologize and thank them like that. There's also a scene later on when he offers to make lunch for the two of them, and Tony later on would never offer to do any cooking, unless it was like a barbecue or something where he's kind of showing off. But it just goes to show you how much stress being boss and the mafia lifestyle has added to his life. He's just so much nicer before he has to start dealing with all of that. It's almost crazy to compare season 1 Tony to season 6. It's just night and day difference. So yeah, that is 46 long. Great episode, and I can't wait to review another one coming up soon. Thanks.